Hello, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the 2021 Coverholder Audit Conference. For those of you who've attended these conferences in previous years, we're delighted to have you back. For those who are new, I'd like to welcome you to this event, an event that's continued to grow in scale and ambition every year. Before going further, I'd like to offer my thanks to my team, led by Janine Powell and Kate Samara Newton, for arranging this event. And a special thanks go out to Eleanor, Chloe and Aaron from my team. I'd also like to thank our colleagues in our communications and events team for all their support in arranging this. Now, we're confident that the technology will not only support, but indeed enhance this event. But if you have any issues, please click on the Help Desk tab displayed at the top of the lobby page. Now, one obvious difference for this year is that we're holding this conference virtually for the first time. And this means we're able to welcome even more of you. And we have well over 300 registered attendees for this event, with over 130 from the audit community, as well as representatives from cover holders, brokers and managing agents. One other huge benefit is that you don't have to queue up in a snow blizzard to be let in, as those of you who joined us at the Tower Hotel a couple of years ago will no doubt oh so painfully recollect. So in a moment, I'd like to take this opportunity to give you my own reflections on last year, a truly extraordinary year for us all, and how in turn that drives this year's conference. But before that, I'm delighted to be able to introduce the Lloyd CEO, John Neal, for his welcome message and for his thoughts.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Lloyd's Audit Conference. It's the first time we've held the event virtually, and although I know we'd all prefer to be seeing one another in person, it's great that we can still bring this community together. And hopefully it won't be long before we can do just that. I'm certainly starting to feel more encouraged by the rate at which the vaccine is being deployed in the UK and indeed in other countries around the world. I recently read an article in the FT that stated that more people have now received the jab than are infected by coronavirus, and that's worldwide. So although times have been extremely challenging, there's increasingly more light at the end of the tunnel. As we all know too well, the pandemic has inflicted catastrophic societal and economic damage around the world, whilst calling for unparalleled measures to stifle the spread of the virus and to help give businesses and economies get back on their feet. Our priority has always been and remains our customers. With that in mind, I want to thank you for all of your hard work. You've stepped up and continue to provide a seamless service to customers all around the world, which really does make an enormous difference to the support for the Lloyd's market and our social purpose. And that's to help businesses and communities reduce the risks they face and to enable them to recover quickly from disasters by paying claims and to provide the security that allows them to innovate, develop and drive economic growth. However, if there is one key learning from the insurance industry in a post-pandemic world, it is that we can do even more to support our customers. To that end, we've been engaging with many of our key stakeholders to map out how the industry can find solutions and support greater preparedness, protection and resilience to the growing and interconnected risks that customers face today and tomorrow. Last year, Lloyd's published a report supporting global recovery and resilience for customers and economies. And that was explaining the impact of the pandemic and setting out a number of ways in which the industry could fast track global economic and societal recovery. Through the report, we proposed 3 open source concepts, and we're currently working alongside the industry to bring these to life. They're Restart, Recovery and Black Swan Re, and they all aim to provide customers with greater protection against future systemic risks. Since publishing our ideas, we've undertaken engagement with more than 25 governments around the world to discuss how we might implement them, and in an effort to address and find solutions to the complications that have arisen from the uncertainty of the pandemic coverage. And we're also focusing on how we can develop and build simpler insurance products, removing complexity and providing better clarity for customers. At the end of last year, I'm delighted to say that we published Lloyd's very first Environmental, Societal and Governance Report, ESG for short, detailing our ambition to integrate sustainability into all of Lloyd's business activities. That's from playing a part in the global transition to net zero, through the risks that we share and the investments that we make, to the way in which we support society generally in the progress that they want and need to make. So whilst this is our first ESG report, Lloyd's has a long track record contributing to the communities in which we operate and crucially helping them recover from disaster. As a market, we underwrite some of the most exciting innovations and protect against the impacts of the most devastating catastrophes. I'm really proud of the role that we play in protecting society from these types of risks, as well as providing the insurance and reinsurance that is critical to propelling the advancement of clean energy and a resilient infrastructure around the world. But we can, and we will do more, as demonstrated by the plan we set out in our ESG report. It demonstrates how we'll build Lloyd's ESG strategy in collaboration with the market, aligning to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and in support of the principles set out in the 2015 Paris Agreement. Importantly, for the first time, we're setting targets for responsible underwriting and responsible investments to help accelerate society's transition from fossil fuel dependency in favour of renewable energy sources. In recent years, Lloyd's has made some much needed progress in driving cultural change across the market. Last year, we announced a gender target for the first time to have 35% women in all leadership roles. That's at board, executive committee, and direct reports for the executive committee level, and that's by the end of 2023. A similar target will be set for ethnicity later this year, and we continue to commit to meaningful and measurable actions in order to build a much more inclusive environment for the many thousands of people that work in our marketplace and to attract new talent to our market. Whilst we've got a long way to go, I'm confident that we're making the right changes that will contribute to a more inclusive and therefore diverse culture. To build on all of this incredible activity and important work, in February we launched FutureSet, a new global platform to drive greater societal resilience to the world's most challenging risks. We developed this in response to the large and complex challenges arising from the pandemic and the urgent need to begin a new connected conversation with customers, members of our industry and governments to tackle the challenges that these risks bring. FutureSet will convene global experts and partner with world-class research organisations, creating new and pioneering insights to drive sustainable solutions to current and future risks. We are absolutely committed to being a catalyst for action, and action's the important word here, to do things differently that will innovate, support economic growth, and allow human progress around the world. If there's one thing the pandemic has shown us, it's that we must continue to adapt in response to our changing risk landscape. Through our Future at Lloyd strategy, we're transforming into the most technologically advanced insurance marketplace in the world. And as our ways of working change, we now have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to shape our iconic underwriting room and the shared spaces we have in the Lloyd's building. We must do this, and that is exactly what we're doing now. We know the ability to negotiate complex risks face-to-face is and will always continue to be part of Lloyd's fabric, yet we now have the opportunity to bring together those traditional ways of working, those connectivity face-to-face actions with forward-thinking digital-focused solutions, such as our virtual underwriting room. And wouldn't it be criminal if we didn't take these learnings from the past 12 months? That's exactly what we'll be covering in the next couple of days, with several industry experts lined up to discuss how we can take these learnings from our recent experience to build a more resilient world. On day one of our conference, you'll hear about how Lloyd's has been navigating claims in a changing world and what impact the pandemic has meant for our delegated authority business. We'll discuss how we perform remote audits, shorten claims payment times, and how these innovations will work beyond the current environment. Tomorrow, we're going to have some really informative sessions focusing on industry-specific and regulatory updates that you need to be aware of in order to continue offering the expertise and the insight that you do to policyholders. We'll also look at how the future of delegated authority will increasingly incorporate digital ecosystems. Integrating these systems into our marketplace is clearly vital for the future at Lloyd's, and we'll need your critical help in supporting this delivery. So a huge thanks to you all for taking the time to join us over the next 2 days. As I said at the start, I hope we're not too far away from being able to have these conversations in person. But for now, I hope you enjoy your virtual conference.
So as John described, Lloyd's priorities are very much focused on supporting our customers, on driving the market's culture and resilience agenda, but also of the importance of ensuring our market can change and adapt to a fast-changing world. These are important at any time, but the impact the pandemic has had on both our customers and on the ways we work means that the spotlight has really been thrown on these challenges. As auditors, you remain on the front line in making sure our market can meet these challenges. So I want to thank you for all the expertise and dedication you bring. To me, there are two specific features that spring to mind when I think about last year, which impacted the audit world and which really run as themes throughout this year's conference. The first is how we all adapted to the challenges of COVID-19, and that we must build on what we achieved last year and not revert to old ways of doing things. And the second is not only how we as a market coped with the challenges of COVID-19, but how we have and will continue to press forward with our objective of raising standards, education, and customer service. So these two features really frame and drive this year's conference. So today, we're going to look at the impact of the pandemic on the audit process and reflect on what's worked well and the lessons that we can draw. So why do this? Well, it's hard to believe that it was almost exactly a year ago now that the impact and scale of the pandemic was becoming clear. Infection rates were rising and the lockdown was just around the corner here in the UK. The headline from an audit perspective is that notwithstanding the impact of the pandemic on our working lives, last year you and the market still completed around 550 audits, which is almost exactly the same number as had been completed in 2019. Now, behind that number is, I think, a pretty impressive story that I think we should reflect on. A story that shows how our audit community, the Lloyd's market and Lloyd's itself rose to extraordinary challenges and adapted processes to be able to continue to support our delegated authority business worldwide. When the lockdown struck, it was very apparent that audits in the normal way could not go ahead. So we were being very shortly asked by some whether Lloyd's would in effect suspend audits until normality had resumed, whenever that was. Well, that was simply never a realistic option as far as we were concerned. The importance of conducting risk-based audits to give the market assurance over cover holders and delegated claims administrators had never been more important. Cover holders and DCAs are the face of our market, especially for consumer and SME policyholders. Their expertise and service to customers are critical, so we just couldn't countenance a reduction in proper levels of oversight. Plus, on a more practical level, audits have been scoped, planned and booked. But we also knew it couldn't just be business as usual. Auditors wouldn't be able to jump on a train or plane and visit a cover holder or conduct an on-site visit. For those reasons, Kate and the audit team worked with the market and the auditor community to support an approach to adapt and support remote audits. Now, you'll hear from Kate later about how that came about and the positive impacts that remote audits have had. And I don't want to steal too much of her thunder, but as Kate will explain, our recent audit survey shows some pretty remarkable statistics. For instance, our survey confirmed that 100% of audits were conducted remotely last year, with almost all of those being conducted fully remotely. And the satisfaction levels from cover holders and DCAs of those audits was also pretty remarkable. 97% of respondents confirmed that they would accept remote audits in the future, with 3/4 confirming that they were satisfied with the overall experience of the audit process. Now, that's not bad for a process which was in effect new to many. Now, none of us truly know what the new normal will look like, but there's a couple of things I think we can safely say. First, the need to oversee cover holders and DCAs will not go away. Managing agents need to understand and mitigate risks, and good quality audits remain an absolutely integral part of that process. Second, the days of audits routinely being conducted by rote and always involving on-site visits is over. Flexibility in terms of approach and methodology needs to be embedded. Now, in the right circumstances, an on-site visit with one-to-one meetings will be the right approach. But what the lockdown's shown is that the use of technology and the use of better data means there can be different ways to more efficiently get the same result, or indeed get better results. We simply must not revert to inefficient and costly processes that add little additional value. And that's why we need to learn and build on the lessons from COVID-19, and that will be the theme for today's sessions. So with that in mind, we kick off from 10 o'clock with Zoe Woods from our claims team, who'll be talking about navigating claims in a changing world. Zoe will be discussing how the Lloyd's claims process was impacted by COVID-19, and she'll talk through some of the systems improvements in support of claims management, with a particular focus on delegated authority. She'll also explain how these improvements fit into our Future at Lloyd's strategy as set out in Blueprint 2. And before going further, I should say that if you would like more information regarding the Future at Lloyd's, please do take a look at Lloyd's website, as that really brings to life what we're delivering there. So then at 11:15, we'll hear from Jenny Laverty, our Complaints Senior Manager. Jenny will talk about complaints handling during the pandemic, and in particular will provide us with a brief overview of Lloyd's complaints handling rules and requirements, and how Lloyd's balance the needs of policyholders and the market when handling complaints relating to COVID-19. She'll also give us an overview of the complaints handling process and the move to secure API messaging. Moving on next to the afternoon session will be delivered to you by Kate Samara Newton, familiar to many of you, as she heads the audit team. Kate will be talking about remote audits and the process innovations beyond COVID-19. Kate's session is split into two parts. In the first part, Kate will be summarising the outcomes of the Lloyd's remote audit survey, which focused on the impact of the pandemic. In the second half, Kate will be leading a panel discussion and live Q&A session on the topic of remote audits and what will be the best practice for remote audits going forward, making sure we really do ensure that we don't go back. And then finally for today, our Lloyd's North America representatives will be holding their live Q&A session, so please join them from 4 o'clock via the Networking Lounge tab on the lobby page. That wraps up today's sessions. So then going into tomorrow, we're going to focus on the second key theme that I wanted to mention. continuous professional development. So it's not enough to have simply responded and adapted to COVID. We need to continuously raise standards of professionalism, education, and customer service. At Lloyd's, we also want to be building a high-performance culture, as we see that as being key to establishing the Lloyd's market as a destination that's truly inclusive. We want to ensure that our business performance will improve and that we'll be more competitive across the globe. So tomorrow, we'll explore how we continue to build professionalism through supporting auditor development and education. And we want to think about some of the ways we can raise standards and how we all need to respond to increasing regulatory challenges worldwide. So on that topic, one key professional development initiative from last year that I must mention was the introduction of auditor accreditation, something that we had discussed in previous year's conferences. I was delighted that this was launched last year to reflect to the market the expertise that you bring. It provides a clear shop window of our auditor community, along with the capabilities you bring, and reflects the integral part of the Lloyd's community that you are. I want to thank all of you that have been involved with this initiative. And it was also great to see this initiative being supported on our delegated audit manager platform. In terms of our development agenda for tomorrow, we start at 8 o'clock in the morning with a live Q&A session with our colleagues from Lloyd's Australia, who'll be able to answer questions around the regulatory and legal challenges that have happened there and how that impacts cover holders. Then at 9:30, Helen Ashenden, Senior Manager from our claims team, will talk about the new approval process for delegated claims administrators, which is really designed to provide the same kite mark of professionalism for claims administrators as we already have for cover holders. As auditors, you need to know what's expected of DCAs going forward. So Helen will be providing an overview of the Lloyd's DCA approval process, as well as the process for onboarding grandfathered DCAs. At 10:45, we're joined by our colleagues from Lloyd's Insurance Company Brussels for a Q&A session where they can answer your burning questions, such as the changing regulatory landscape post-Brexit. And then following that at 12:15, I'm absolutely delighted to announce that we'll be joined by Melissa Collett, the Professional Standards Director from the CII. Melissa will be talking about the new Chartered Insurance Underwriting Agent title, what the criteria are, and how that aligns to Lloyd's cover holder status. I'm especially delighted that Melissa can join us, as Lloyd's and the CII are looking to work together to deliver more ways of raising standards. So please do continue to look out for that. And one example of how we plan to work together during this year will be on the subject of product simplification, making sure that we help our industry provide policies that customers both want and which they understand. Then after lunch at 2:15, we have Dean Wickens, our Senior Manager from our International Regulatory team, an expert in international compliance. Dean will be talking about regulatory changes in 2020 and their impact beyond. And he'll in particular focus on the general impact of COVID-19 on the regulatory landscape and the likely implications for this year. He'll be explaining some of the key drivers and trends in insurance regulation we expect to see. And he'll also be looking at some specific areas of regulation in Lloyd's key markets of relevance to cover holders. And then at 3:45, Lindsay Davies, who heads the Delegated Authority and Complaints function at Lloyd's, will be talking about the Future at Lloyd's DA programme, how we're working towards a data-first world and supporting greater efficiencies. Lindsay will in particular talk about Delegated Contract and Oversight Manager, or DCOM, the system that's being built through the Future at Lloyd's to support and modernise cover holder business. Lindsay will also examine how we're delivering risk-based oversight over cover holders, and she'll draw out some of the themes that we're seeing from our own oversight, themes that I hope will help inform you as auditors. And then finally, Peter Montanaro, Lloyd's Head of Market Oversight and Delivery, will wrap up our conference and provide his own reflections on the conference and how he sees oversight developing. I'd like to thank all our speakers for participating, and I'm really excited about hearing what they've got to say over these 2 days. But I also know what a big time commitment it is to you to join us. So many thanks to you for joining this conference. Please do reach out to me or the team for your comments and thoughts about how we make this event even better for the future. And with that, I wish you the very best, and I hope you enjoy the sessions to come. Thank you.